Recording in progress.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the, excuse me. Just sign into the agenda. Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, June 9th, 2021 Pima Community College Governing Board meeting. The first item on our agenda is the public hearing and special meeting. So the first thing I'm going to do is call to order the convening of the public hearing. In keeping with the notice given to the general public, we are calling to order the public hearing on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. At last month's meeting of the Governing Board, a comprehensive review of the proposed fiscal year 2021 to 2022 budget was presented by Dr. B. Following discussion, the Board of directed that the proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 budget be formally presented for consideration by the residents and taxpayers of the College District. This has now been accomplished in accordance with state law by publishing the proposed budget and notice of this evening's public hearing in the Arizona Daily Star on May 24th and May 30th, 2021. The board would like to ask the administration to give a brief overview of the budget prior to responding to any questions from the public. So Chancellor Lambert.
Yes. Good evening, everybody, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to have Dr. David B. Is that echoing? Is it okay?
Yes.
Is it okay? Okay. So I'm going to have Dr. David B. just do a brief summary of the proposed budget. So, Dave?
Chairperson Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, guests, good evening and welcome to any guests who may be joining us tonight. It is my pleasure to present to you all the proposed budget and tax information for fiscal year 2022. That's the year that starts in July. As you all know, this is the culmination of a series of board study sessions, board action items, discussions with the college and the community that occur beginning in the fall and then in earnest all during the spring semester. So I am pleased to report that this budget reflects the increased expenditure limitation.
Dr. B, I'm sorry to interrupt. There is sort of a reverberated echo. If there's any way you could talk just a little clearer into the microphone so we can hear you just a little clearer. Thank you.
Okay, is that better?
It may be the sound system here, but I think it's a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay, I will do my best. I'm pleased to report that the budget that we're going to be presenting tonight reflects the increased expenditure limitation as passed by the voters last November through Proposition 481. And consistent with that, the budget does not include a tax levy increase. So I'll start tonight. I'll do a very quick overview of the tax levy information, and then I'll pause for if there were any board questions about taxes. And then I'll move into a quick summary of the budget and then leave some time and questions for that. All right. So this is a very quick overview and summary of the property tax information. The net tax value information here at the top, it shows this column is what the current year is, and then the proposed is the fiscal year 22. So the tax value, this figure up here is what the Pima County tax value, the total property valuation in the county. So if you read that, that's in hundreds, which means it's 9.1 billion in 21, moving up to almost 9.7 billion in the upcoming year. The overall change in valuation for the year is a little over 6%. What's really important to the college is the next figure down, which is that the new property grew by 1.1%. And what that means is that if a new property enters the tax rolls, we realize that entire property tax from that new property, and we don't have to increase the tax rate to realize that revenue. And so that's what this figure is down here at the bottom. The 1.3+ million is what's generated from new property taxes, and that is all that we're doing as we're doing what's called levy neutral, which means that we're keeping the tax rate essentially the same and only generating the additional revenue from the new property growth. That results in a decrease because there's an increase in the property valuation that happened during the year. That means that our tax rate will decrease about 4.7%. That's from the $1.33 and change to the $1.27. So what that means for a property that's valued at $100,000, the tax bill for this upcoming year would be $127.33. So that's how you read that. And again, we are going levy neutral. That was something that we discussed with as part of Prop 481, both to reinforce the idea that we really needed just relief from expenditure limitation, and also in reflection of the fact that COVID and the pandemic has had an adverse impact on our community. It would not be a good time for us to increase the taxes for that reason as well. The last two charts I have related to the tax give some perspective. This is a comparison of our peer or institutions and what their tax rates are. So as you can see, we're the third lowest in the state, just a touch over Maricopa. As you can see over on the far right-hand side, Coconino is an outlier. They were founded with a very low tax rate, and they have actually over the years been trying to increase that tax rate because it's really inhibiting their ability, their financial flexibility and ability to provide education. So they're not a very good measure over there on the right-hand side. And then you can see that we are on the low end of the spectrum compared to our peer institutions. And then this last chart shows the comparison over time and how the tax rates have changed. As I believe you all know, we do not have a secondary tax rate. We haven't issued GO bonds in a long time, and we've paid them down paid them off back in 2015. And so you can see that our tax rate as we've been levy neutral the last 2 years, that our tax rate has been declining and is getting back to about the same total tax rate as what was experienced back in fiscal year 07. The one other thing that I wanted to add, and we put this in the board packet for information, is because we have not increased the levy maximum the last 2 years that we've been levy neutral, our levy maximum is now about $5 million above what we'll be levying. We retain that ability to increase up to that level through a truth in taxation process in the future. And I just want the board to be aware that we have that additional capacity out there for future years should we need it. Okay, with that, I will pause if there are any questions related to the taxes.
So are there any questions from the board? But Dr. B, if we could just, I overlooked the roll call. So I just want to do that for the record because we have somebody calling in too. So Mr. Sullivan, if you could just quickly do the roll call.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Here.
Ms. Garcia?
Here.
Ms. Ripley?
Here.
Mr. Klinko?
Here.
And I believe Dr. Hay is with us remotely.
Yes.
Okay, great. Are there any questions for Dr. B? Yes, Ms. Garcia.
So what's the total increase again in the budget? The increase in revenues?
The increase in revenues is about 1.3 million, a little more than 1.3
Repeat that again, I can't hear you.
1.35 million.
All
It's
right,
this
that's
figure
it.
here.
Are there any other questions from any other board members on this? Okay. We are now going to have a call for public comment. The public comment will be permitted regarding the proposed budget. We have one person for public comment, Michaela Hayes.
Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I apologize for the Pokemon on screen. But, my son was logged in for class. So if you can see my logo, that's why. All right. Let's see. Good evening, members of the board, colleagues, and guests. I watched the presentation on Monday night about the proposed property restoration project. Thank you, everyone, for asking questions and working towards the best solution for the college. Let me start by saying I am one who loves history and preserving history. I love seeing renovations that restore value and merge the modern day function with historical memory, and I truly do see the value in that. However, I also really appreciated Board Member Garcia's questions about the price tag and our funding options and how those balance with faculty and staff salaries. I appreciated Mr. Klinko's question about funding sources as well, as the history in recent years has been that capital was separate from operations with expenditure limitations. It seems we're no longer divided by this distinction with the passage of 481 and 207. So my question is this the time to do it? Should the college move forward with the proposed renovations and expansion now at the cost of honoring the work the employees have done this past year during COVID and truly the past several years with no step advancement or step program in place? Or could we do more for our employees than a small cost of living adjustment and $1,000 stipend if we prioritized our spending differently? It seems we do actually have the money, and that money could be spent for those that have put in countless hours of work transitioning the jobs to support students and each other throughout the pandemic situation. I know there was a slide presented to you at the budget session showing how the cost of living adjustments have kept wages somewhat in line with inflation. However, I think if you look at the cumulative effect of not having steps or yearly cost of living adjustments for each employee group separately, you'd find that faculty and staff have not actually kept up. And we're significantly behind where we would have been if there had been yearly COLAs since 2014. This year's 2% COLA and $1,000 falls short of making up for that. Employees are, of course, thankful for help, but many are still hurting and feeling the impact of making relatively less money than they had 7 years ago. The college had expenditure limitation as the reason for not being able to make these adjustments before. It's a little disheartening to hear discussions of taking money that could be used to fill in that financial gap for employees and using it towards such a large-scale project. I heard wonderful things about the Teaching and Learning Center and the support for faculty on Monday night, and I definitely don't want to diminish their work. They were very helpful, and I feel it was necessary to have their support during this fast transition. However, should we put this expense towards a new building and renovated space at the expense of helping out faculty and staff more? Is there a way that we could give the departments those space while still helping employees out more at this time? Before Monday's presentation, my public comment was mainly going to be to let you know that PCCA did meet briefly with Dr. B. We had a good discussion, and it's always a joy to work with Dr. B. I really do truly respect him. But we did not actually get to go over all our questions that as had been asked by Ms. Ripley. What we did discuss was that we should meet more often and earlier starting in the fall this coming year to address future budgetary questions. And I'm hopeful that these future conversations can be productive and substantive as we work together to move PCC forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hayes. And that is the end of the public comments that are pre-registered. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment at this time? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to adjourn the public hearing, and we're going to convene the special meeting to consider the two motions. So, having met the requirements prescribed by state law, do I have a motion to approve the Pima County Community College District's property tax rates levies for fiscal year 2022?
We're just asking about the tax levy.
This is only the tax levy.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Garcia,
Yes.
Ms. Ripley,
Yes.
Mr. Klinko,
Yes.
Dr. Hay.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Next item is, having met the requirements prescribed by state law for the review of the college's proposed budget, do I have a motion to approve the proposed budget for the Pima Community College District for the fiscal year July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022?
I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. Can I table it?
Well, first someone has to make a motion, and then you could ask to table it.
Okay.
Yes.
I move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Ms.
Okay.
Garcia?
Well, I'm not sure quite how to do this. But I would request that any funds for the train project be eliminated from the budget until we vote and the package is presented to us on what's going to be done. I'm not sure how to do that.
Okay, so
So-
Mr. Sylvan, could you, well, actually, maybe Dr. B could provide an explanation for the cap that we are approving tonight. Dr. B, could you maybe provide a little bit of explanation about the framework and that large capital expenditures would still have to come back for the board for approval?
Yeah, and and then I'm sure Jeff will probably add in a little bit after what I say. So the budget includes the capacity to be able to do that project. That project has to come back to the board for approval before it actually will happen. And so it would be consistent to approve the budget as we've presented it, and still have the future decision related to train upcoming in a future board action item. And we talked to the board about doing it that way. Again, this gives us the capability to do that project because ultimately the budget is establishing a maximum amount that we can spend, but we can always decide not to do something and spend less. We just can't go in the
Dr.
other
B, I
direction.
appreciate your, the information that you're providing, but in my view, that needs to be eliminated from the budget at this point.
So just one point of clarification.
Yes, Mr.
If-
Sylvan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If what you do is lower the budget by that amount, then we can't spend it for anything. So,
And that's okay, because, it's really, we're not going to make any decisions until all this stuff comes through. It's going to be another 6 months before anything happens.
So I guess a couple things to consider. So one is, as Dr. B said, passing the budget does not commit the board to fund any particular capital project. So any capital project over $250,000 like that one has to come back to the board. So approval tonight does not in any way commit the college to fund that project. The second piece would be, like I said, if you take it out of the budget, you reduce spending. Instead, if you leave it in the budget, we can always move that money to fund a different project or no project at all, but you have the option to do so, whereas if you just lower the budget by that amount of money, we can't spend that amount of money on anything.
Well, I'm going to apologize, but since I can't trust what's happening, I still am going to propose that we delete that from the budget.
So Ms. Garcia, what you would need to do is offer an amendment to the motion, or you could offer a substitute motion, and then we would vote on that amendment. We would vote it up or down, and then we would vote on the underlying item. So do you want to make so first of all, would it be considered a friendly amendment to the motion maker and the person who made the second?
So let me, if I might explain that.
Yes.
So the way our procedural rules, are set up, if someone makes a motion and then someone wants to amend the motion, the person who made the original motion has a decision to make. I agree with that amendment, and I will accept it as a friendly amendment, in which case we don't have a separate vote on it. Or you could say, I don't think it's aligns with what my intent was, therefore I don't accept it as a friendly amendment, in which case we have to have a vote on whether to amend or not. Does that?
Yeah. Yeah, so what I think we would, so what we're going to have to, so I think maybe we should vote on it separately. And then we need, the motion's been made. Is there a second for the motion to amend the motion? Second, okay, now we can have a discussion about
Proposed
this
amendment.
particular proposal. So is there any discussion on this particular amendment to the underlying motion?
Okay, I can discuss them. Okay, considering that, I think I've already discussed my feelings about the way that some of this stuff has gone through with the contract. I have my doubts about how the system is being run. Okay, and I apologize for that, but that's, it's my own personal opinion about things. So in reviewing the facilities report, the audit that they did, there's a lot of questions about what should happen and shouldn't happen, okay? So I am not comfortable putting this at all in the budget, considering that the chancellor has the ability to approve $250,000 on anything. He could do that with some portions of it and still spend money on it. So therefore, I'm not willing to have that in the budget.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion? Ms. Ripley?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Garcia. I just want to make it clear so that I understand this. If we keep it in the budget, it's not earmarked necessarily specifically for the train project. It's in the budget. So if we, as a board, vote not to continue the train project, we still have that money available in the case of, and with the opportunity to do some other capital, or not capital, but other mechanical improvements. The AC units, they were talking about the HVAC units really, and the follow-on projects with the School of Mechanics. But if we needed a new HVAC system and we didn't have that budget, that money in the budget, we would be out on a limb, correct?
Right, so and Dr. B, I think, would echo this. The budget you're passing is a capacity budget. What that means is it's the maximum amount that you can spend on different areas. It does not require that you spend it. Whatever you set as that capacity limit is the limit that we spend. So if you reduce the budget by, pick a number, $1 million, just for simplicity, then you cannot spend that additional $1 million on anything in the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay, and just to be clear also, how much money are we talking about in that particular line item?
Dr. B?
Approximately 13 million.
Okay, so again, if we kept that $13 million in, it is, and I want to repeat this, it is not specifically earmarked for train. Is that correct?
Dr. B?
So it in the capital project list, it was listed as a potential project. But again, it will not happen if the board does not approve the going forward with that project. So it is essentially set aside for that project. If that project doesn't happen, then that money would be set aside and available for another use that the board may approve.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that answers, just for everybody's clarity though, the whole reason we went down this track, no pun intended, with train, but we were looking for, because out of necessity, an improvement to our HVAC system. That's not correct?
No, it's not.
Chancellor Lambert?
So at some point, is this working?
Yes.
So at some point, the college is going to have to address its deferred maintenance issues, which HVAC and our energy management systems are a component of that. So I think another facet to keep in mind, in addition to that 13 million that Dave's talking about, a subset of that, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, is federal stimulus money. And so even if the board did not agree to the 13 million, that doesn't mean that we still have the stimulus money, but it's limited in how it can be used. So in other words, the train project is not $13 million from the college. Some of that is from the stimulus money. Does that make sense?
Ms. Garcia?
How much is that?
Dr. B?
Just the stimulus money?
We're estimating that we can use about $5 million of stimulus money for that $13 million project.
Are there other comments or questions from the board on this particular?
Chairman
Yes,
Klinko?
Dr. Hay.
I just want to support Commander Ripley's assessment and think that her analysis of the money that's in the budget versus how we spend it ultimately is correct, and I support her analysis.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Garcia.
Okay, so the one thing is that this is the highest budget the college has ever approved.
Dr. B, is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
And how much
It
of an
reflects,
increase is
it
that?
reflects, let's put a little bit of an explanation. So it reflects the federal stimulus money coming into the college. So that's an increased money. That's money that we haven't received in any fashion or in the relative size that we're talking about now. And then the other component to it, and this is even the bigger part of it, is that the budget reflects a lot of capital projects that we already have underway. The continuation of the aviation construction, as well as the continuation of the applied technology building, and then also setting aside to start up the project for allied health. So it's really, the growth in the budget is really a function of growth in our capital projects, which have been planned, most of which have been planned for some long period of time, actually, and reflected by the revenue bonds projects and the issuing revenue bonds a number of years ago.
Okay, so Dr. B, so let me ask again, and I'm sorry if I'm being redundant. So $13 million assigned to the train, you're saying that not all of that is going to be, we're budgeting it, but we're not going to be putting that money in. So in my assessment, subtract the $5 million from the 13, or is the $5 million a combination of everything on what we're being given on the stimulus money?
So I think the issue is that the budget gives you the ability, the budget that we're proposing gives you the ability to spend the entire $13 million for the project. The issue with the federal funds is that about $5 million of that 13 million we think can be offset by the federal funds. And the challenge with that is that there's a possibility that we don't have another similar project, and we would then, if we're unable to find appropriate uses for that federal money, that federal money could go back to the government. We would be, wouldn't be tapping into the resources that are totally available to us. I think that's a little bit of the risk that we're talking about.
Thank you.
Okay, so are there any other questions on the amendment? Mr. Gonzalez?
One question now that you're mentioning the federal monies, is there a time limit to use that money?
Dr. B?
Yeah, generally they are giving, for most of the HERF funds, it's 1 year from the time of when you're granted the money, or when you've received the money. I think that there's a good chance that there will be a little bit of an extension to it, but we're talking about 12 months from, we just received the third allotment this week. We're talking about 12 months from now, and maybe a little bit more than that, but we're talking about, we will need to use the money fairly quickly.
Mr. Gonzalez, any follow-up questions?
I'm willing to accept this budget, but I want to make darn sure that and so I need your word, Chancellor, that if any money is to be spent on train, even though you're allowed $250,000, that you bring it forward to the board.
The train project will be,
Any of the train items.
so,
Chancellor Lambert. Well, first of all, just Mr. Gonzalez was about to say something. So before Chancellor Lambert finishes that statement, I do want to get your last question out because it looks like we're wrapping the conversation up and are going to vote. So, Mr. Gonzalez.
The question that I have for Mr. B up there is that the date that it came in, I know there's 3 pockets of federal monies or CARES, the COVID monies, correct? Which pocket is this from?
This is likely to come out of the HERF 3, so the funds that just came in this week.
For the CARES?
The final fund.
No, it's the CARES is what came in back a little more than a year ago, and then CARISA is what came in a few months ago, and then ARPA, which is the third HERF 3, came in just this last week. And we're still identifying and spending out the CARISA money. The CARES money has been spent. We're spending out and planning out the use of the CARISA funds. And then now we're starting to plan out how to use the ARPA funds as well.
Is there a potential of getting another 4th allocation from the federal government in reference to the pandemic?
I think that that's extremely unlikely, given and others certainly can weigh in with as valid of an opinion, but from what I'm seeing from the federal government, it's unlikely that there'll be funds coming in a stimulus fashion. The one thing that could come in within the next year might be infrastructure money, but I think by the time they get that passed, I think the fact that there would be community college infrastructure money might be, it's certainly diminishing, given that they've already cut a large amount out of what the original plans were.
Thank you.
Okay, so now,
Right.
Chancellor Lambert, could you just give us your assurance that any funding related to train would come to this board for approval?
So the approval of the train agreement will be brought to this board to be approved or not approved. So we will not be expending dollars until that approval happens. Now, I say that, and then I'll put this caveat to that. The board already approved the DHP system. That's the dry hydrogen peroxide, so money will be expended for that purpose. Now, if there's, little, 1,000, 2,000 there, I may not even be aware of that. So that's why I'm cautious, because if, let's say, we had to do something with train that cost the college a few $1,000s, I probably would never see that. So I just want you to know that too. But I'm committed to making sure that we don't expend college resources on the train project until it comes before this board for its approval.
Oh, and if other expenses were to be made for train, I would appreciate it if it would be brought to the board, at least inform us.
If I'm aware of them.
If you're aware of it.
Right. Because remember, certain dollar amounts are.
You don't see.
I don't see, so, but if it's brought to my attention, certainly. And now, are you saying even as it relates to the DHP piece?
Yeah, even the DHP.
We can put them in as information items.
I mean, it's been approved, but I'd
Right,
like
right.
to know.
But it'll always lag because of the way the board meetings are structured.
So Ms. Ripley has a question, but before we do we want to vote on the motion, or do you want to withdraw the amendment? Or do we want to vote? So you could just withdraw it, and then we would vote on the underlying,
I'll withdraw it.
okay. So the amendment to the underlying motion has been withdrawn. So Ms. Ripley.
Right, and just also for transparency and clarity, there has not been a contract yet, and we are also going to, at some point, meet to review the internal review and also an external review on the energy audit that was conducted by Train. And at that point, I'm hoping more questions will be answered.
So all of those, so let me back up. So we have an umbrella contract with Train. So the board has already approved the umbrella contract. So now what we're working through is specific terms and conditions related to standards in which to measure the savings in which they have presented to the board. If they can satisfy those standards, then we need to demonstrate a business reason why we would not go through with that part of the agreement, okay? And so as part of that, what you're describing is that's all being integrated into working on the standards. So we brought in, I believe it was GLHN to help us with that process. So that's our independent third-party group that's helping us.
But Chancellor.
Yes, Ms. Garcia,
One
go
more
ahead.
thing, I'm sorry. Is that you have not presented to us the actual audit report by our internal facilities department. It's already been done.
You have a copy of it?
You do,
Then you've been given it,
not by you.
but you have a copy of it.
Okay, so
Anyway,
I am
so-
concerned that we are now moving beyond the budget discussion. So the underlying, so just to recap, we have a motion on the table. Is there any other discussion about the underlying budget at this point? Ms. Ripley, do you have? No? Okay. Okay, so hearing no more discussion, we're going to have a roll call vote. Mr. Sylvan?
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Garcia,
I abstain.
Ms. Ripley,
Yes.
Mr. Klinko?
Yes?
Dr. Hay?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0 with Ms. Garcia abstaining. Now, we're going to take a very short recess. We need to sign some documents related to the budget, and then we will reconvene our regular meeting. So if you could just, we will pause until the sound of the gavel.
Jeff. Yep. Okay, Jeff. Yeah, I gave it to her. Or did you have to sign it? Not that one, okay.
No, I just want to figure out how we're going to bury it, the sign.
Yeah, she'll take care of it.
So I'd like to call to order the regular meeting. The first order of business on our regular meeting is our public comment and call to the audience. The Pima Community College Governing Board welcomes public comment on issues within the jurisdiction of the college. Generally, the total time for public comment will be limited to 45 minutes, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual. These times limits may be modified by the board chair or board individuals. Sharing comments are expected to communicate with decorum and respect. Individuals who engage in disorderly conduct or who use divisive or insulting language may have their times reduced or concluded by the board chair. At the conclusion of the public comment, individual board members may respond to criticism made by those who address the board, may ask staff to review a matter, or may ask that the matter be put on a future agenda. Members of the board, however, may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during public comment unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. Finally, be advised that internal college processes are available to students and employees for communication. So we do have a number of public comments this evening. The first will be Guadalupe Caballero, who I believe will be introducing a number of other speakers. Well, we can't hear you, actually. It's a little...
Can you hear me now?
We can, yes. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, board members. Tonight, we're going to introduce the new Student Senate group, and I'm going to have them, we wanted them to introduce themselves. Is that possible?
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I have a list, just a minute. So we're going to start with Colin Bryant. Colin?
Can you hear me?
We can, Mr. Bryant. Go ahead.
All right. Yes, I'm Colin Bryant. I'm going into my second year here at Pima, and I am the Desert Vista representative for the Student Senate, and I'm also the governing board representative for the Student Senate. So you will be seeing lots of me, and I'll be seeing lots of you, and I'm excited to work with you guys. And I'm also studying chemistry. That's my major.
Thank you, Colin. Now we have Miguel Barrera.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miguel Barrera. I'm in the pre-engineering program of study here at Pima. I'm also a member of the Student Advisory Board, the All College Council, and Student Senate representative for Downtown Campus. I'm also a member of PTK and its liaison for Downtown Campus. Thank you.
Gracias, Miguel. We have Jacqueline Wirt. Jacqueline?
Hi there, can you all hear me?
We can, yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Jacqueline Wirt. I'm majoring in sociology, and I'll be next year's All College Council representative, as well as representing West Campus. Thank you for having us.
Gracias, Jacqueline. Next, we have Sage Hawkins.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, I am Sage Hawkins. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am the Student Senate representative for East Campus, as well as the Senate Chair. I am also on the Student Advisory Board, as well as the Secretary for the Pima Pride Alliance, and I'm a sociology major. Thanks for having us today.
Thank you, Sage. Next, we have Alyssa Saunders.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, my name is Alyssa Saunders. I go by she, her. My program of study is nursing. My position in Student Senate is co-chair, and I represent the Northwest Campus.
Thank you, Alyssa. Next, we have Max Luevanos.
Good evening. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So, as Guadalupe stated, my name is Maximus Luevanos, and my major is in neuroscience and cognitive science. I'm a pre-med student with aspirations to become a psychiatrist. I'm the Student Senate Secretary, and I will be a representative of downtown campus. Thank you very much. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you, Max. Next, we have Andrea Salazar Calderon.
Good evening, Chairperson Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, and all present here. My name is Andrea Salazar, and this semester I'll be finishing my first year at Pima. I'm working towards an associate in business administration and an honor certificate. The upcoming year, I'll be serving as the vice president for our Phi Theta Kappa chapter, as part of the executive team of the Honors Club, president of the Pima Cares Club, and co-secretary and Pima Online Student Senator. Thank you.
Gracias, Andrea. Next, we have Namrata Patel.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Namrata Patel. I am in the Hospitality Leadership Program here at Pima. I am the treasurer for the Student Senate, and I'm also part of the Student Advisory Board. I represent the online campus. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Namrata. Next, we have Carla Wilson.
Hi, my name is Carla Wilson. Hope you guys can hear me.
We can.
Great. So I am a postgraduate paralegal certificate student at Pima College, and I am the parliamentarian of the Student Senate. And happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Carla. Next, we have Rachel Gravina.
Hello, my name is Rachel Gravina, and I am currently majoring in pre-health, and I plan on transferring to the U of A to major in public health. I am the social media liaison for the Student Senate, and I am also the West Campus representative. And I am also the West Campus liaison for Phi Theta Kappa, and I am an honors executive officer for this year. I'll see you guys around. Thank you.
Gracias, Rachel. Next, we have Alyssa. Sorry, Alyssa already went. So I also want to thank Michael Lopez, Bea Velasquez, Jennifer Welburn, Dr. Suzanne Desjardins, and Valerie Vidal King that helped make this possible for the student senators. Thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you very much. It looks like we have B. Velasquez who would also like to comment on this topic. Maybe not. Okay, well, on behalf of the board, we really want to congratulate all of the students who are taking this leadership position. The Student Senate really is an important feature and facet of the institution and its running. The student senators in the past have brought forward very meaningful ideas and information to the board to help us and inform our decision-making, including more open resource written materials. These types of initiatives have really been advanced by the Senate, and we really thank you for your participation and leadership. It means a lot to the institution. So thank you for being here this evening, and we hope to hear back from you throughout the year on how things are going. Thank you very much. Next, we have Ken Scoville. Mr. Scoville, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'd like everyone else, I will ask, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. My name is Ken Scoville. I'm a local historian and retired teacher, and I've been involved in community issues in Tucson since 1985. And before I get any farther, I want to applaud the college about the new Automotive Tech and Innovation Center, which focuses on the importance of the automobile in the 21st century. And being an historian, I think it's just wonderful that this new center is along the historic gateway for the automobile in the early part of the 20th century. I'm here to speak in support of the historic motels on Drockman. For several years, I was on the Oracle Area Revitalization Task Force for the city of Tucson. During this time, I was directly involved with the adaptive reuse of the historic Ghost Ranch Lodge. And this wonderful lodge was adapted in a very positive way, and this led to national recognition for the developer and the city of Tucson. And I attended a city council meeting for that recognition. The adaptive reuse of these historic motels will bring national recognition to Pima Community College and the downtown campus. And as I travel all across the United States and look at adaptive reuses of historic buildings, they are such a wonderful, supportive use of our traditions and history. So again, I want to add my support, and anything I could do as a volunteer to see this adaptive reuse so the students and the community could enjoy those resources in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scoville. Next, we have Rebeccaroop. Ms. Roop, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Rebeccaroop, and I reside at 5701 East Glen Street. I wanted to voice support also for tonight's agenda item 11.2, Downtown Campus Hotel Motel Development. I do this because years of my career as a planner with the City of Tucson have been focused on the revitalization of the Oracle Miracle Mile area, which includes the Pima Community College downtown campus and the hotel motel properties addressed in the agenda item. Pima Community College has been a collaborative partner throughout this planning work, along with the surrounding neighborhoods, businesses, and other organizations. Through extensive hands-on engagement with stakeholders and the broader public, several themes have been continually repeated. First, the importance of the area's history, something that I heard through so many stories about staying in a motor court hotel, dancing, eating, bowling, getting married, going to school. In fact, the significance of this history was confirmed in the listing of the Miracle Mile Historic District on the National Register of Historic Places in 2017. It also was the impetus for relocating the historic neon signs that Pima Community College so kindly gave a home for on Drockman Street. Second, the importance of creating places that enhance the area. Drockman Street has been identified and rendered multiple times as a street that has the potential to be a lively destination with an outward identity that would complement the downtown campus's more inward identity. This is a street that can be memorable, not unlike the iconic neon saguaro on Oracle Road, which is an image that now appears on everything from coffee cups to keychains to lamps. Third, the importance of providing opportunities and services that will benefit and help improve the lives of those who live in the area along with others. The diner being considered, for instance, would provide a place for students to try out their culinary skills while providing neighbors a place to eat at, I'm guessing, a reasonable cost. So in summary, repurposing these historic properties is about honoring the area's history, contributing to the area's future, and serving both the college and its neighbors. I have worked on well-known projects in major cities in this country, and I truly believe that if we all pull in the same direction, this area will become a much talked about testament to Tucson's dedication to sustaining its unique and special character. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roop. And that concludes our public comment and call to the audience. Next, we have our remarks by the governing board. We have 25 minutes set aside for this. Mr. Gonzalez.
I just want to say hello to everybody that's watching right now. I hope everything's going well. As I mentioned before, we do have big challenging times, but I think we're seeing the light. And I think that light is coming very shortly as well, too. I do want to acknowledge our students that graduated a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, not only the community college students, but also the high school students that will hopefully will be also transitioning out here as well, too, because I think those are the people, the youngsters, the students that will help us follow what we want to do here at Pima Community College. And with that, I do want to end with having a statement that, as you has been heard before, and it's alongside just following up on what Ms. Garcia mentioned. And this is my statement for June 9th meeting. Tonight, I would like to address the governing board. The subject I want to address this evening is a train contract. These are the facts concerning the train contract based on 500 plus emails received pursuant to a public record request. On June 4th, 2019, 10:15 a.m., a train employee emailed Greg Wilson and included many disparaging remarks about Vice Chancellor Bill Ward. 2 hours later, Mr. Ward was removed from the train RFP development process in an email from Mr. Lambert at the instigation of the train employee. On the email to Mr. Ward, Mr. Lambert appointed Mr. B and Mr. Duray to take the lead on the train project. During the 2019, during the time of the RFP was being developed, the train employee exchanged approximately 190 emails with PCC employees, including Mr. Lambert. Between July 1, August 1, 2019, the train employee and Mr. B exchanged 26 emails while Mr. B was supervising and writing the RFP. On Thursday, July 19, 2019, the train employee emailed Greg Wilson and stated, quote, "I had 90 minutes visit with Dr. B. Before the RFP was published, the train employee exchanged approximately 90 emails with Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson was the team leader of the train RFP evaluation team. Board members, Ms. Garcia, and myself, Mr. Gonzalez, told the board that they knew from firsthand source that the train employee had stated he had written the energy management RFP. We have independently confirmed their statement. On May 3rd, 2021, a PCC employee emailed a PCC contractor, "Do you have anything more about the RFP generation that I want, that what I learned independently of you, that train wrote it? I was told by this Bryce May, a train employee, and I believe you have heard this from other employees at train. It sounds like someone here at PCC is saying they pulled it from off-the-shelf resource. This doesn't make sense as the RFP was so specific and so well aligned with what train has been trying to sell before the RFP went out. Do you have anything to add to this? I have personal knowledge that 3 board members met with senior executive who is currently facing disciplinary action at the request. I know that these board members met with individual as a whistleblower. This individual is entitled whistleblower status. The 2 investigations conducted by a longtime contracted attorney to the train RFP were not unbiased and impartial. Therefore, were ineffective as they failed to uncover the most evidence. There is more than enough evidence for this board to launch an independent investigation how the train RFP was developed, and if any train employee was involved in its creation. Ms. Garcia and I know that Ms. Garcia and I now ask for an immediate independent investigation into the train RFP process. The board must operate in a direct democratic fashion. If the board majority is not interested in the facts and evidence that are in the public record, they should be confirmed by a vote in the public session. This issue has the potential of exposing the college to legal action, and that may each board member and Mr. Lambert in their personal capacities. Let me remind you, the board, that in 2013, HLC placed the college on probation for contracting practices and for failing to oversee the chancellor's action. Also, the board should recall that in Katz versus PCC, the court ruled that Mr. Lambert denied an employee due process. It appears that he is on the same path now. I do not and will not support the firing of Bill Ward. And I want to submit this. Submit it as my statement because it's nothing new. We've been discussing it and talking about it, and I think it's about time that we need to get to the bottom of this. And I do have some of the emails right here in reference to the statements that I.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. Ms. Garcia.
Well, I'm going to follow the same path as Mr. Gonzalez. So I have a statement to read as well. So I'm going to state that I received a copy of a letter from Bill Ward to the Chancellor dated May 20th, 2021. I also received a document of the entitled Facilities Review Train Investment Grade Audit, and 6 documents attached as appendices to the train report. In summary, due to the number and variety of issues, oversights, and omissions concerns identified during our review and outlined in this document, PCC Facilities recommends pay $200,000 for the IGA performed by Train and close the purchase order. Do not accept the recommendations proposed by Train that the academic energy living lab component stands on its own and should continue under the downtown campus building renovation projects as planned. Consider utilizing one of the 5 energy service companies listed with the cooperative contracts available to utilize via the State of Arizona Cooperative Contract for Energy Management System Services. Consider creating a new RFP under the direction of PCC Facilities with the guidelines of unbiased engineering firm, utilizing the experience and recommendations of the PCC Energy Resource Manager and independent subject matter experts. Engage an independent third-party non-equipment manufacturing engineering firm to conduct an updated, impartial, comprehensive facilities condition audit and make unbiased recommendations for PCC Facilities has already requested funding for the independent facilities condition audit for the inclusion of the 22 capital budget. If the college decides to approve and move forward with a full set of contract recommendations found in the audit, is PCC strongly requested to be included in the review and the determination of the final contract language prior to the execution of any signed agreement or purchase order in order to utilize subject matter experts to protect the best interest of the college. The individuals who are here to speak about the various projects are not construction of energy experts. If Mr. Ward files legal action against the college, the board will be named in their individual capacity. They've called upon to testify in any legal action brought by Mr. Ward. I will truly testify that I have evidence that prior to Mr. Lambert's action against Bill Ward, the 3 board members requested to meet with him. When I asked to meet with Bill Ward, I met with him as a whistleblower. As a board member, I believe that Mr. Lambert has denied Bill Ward his due process rights. Mr. Gonzalez and I have provided the board in public sessions sufficient information about potential violations of procurement policy in regards to the train RFP. If Mr. Ward is terminated, this board will share responsibility. The chair's signing of policy granting Mr. Lambert absolute power will not be defensible argument as to the board's complicity in Bill Ward's firing. That's all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Garcia. Ms. Ripley.
Thank you. Thank you also for your statements, Mr. Gonzalez and Ms. Garcia. I feel that this will require a lot more discussion and a lot more transparency and clarity, especially regarding the RFP issue and the responses to all of the emails that you were referring to, Mr. Gonzalez. So I would personally like to have another session to talk about this and to figure out, because I see two things, the RFP being an issue itself.
Ms. Ripley, just a point of order. So I don't want us to move into a discussion about items that aren't on the agenda. So I think putting it on as a future item for a study session probably would be the right way. So this time really is set aside for issues facing the college, sort of updates on schedules and things that people are participating in with college activities. So I hate to cut you off, but I just want to keep us, really within the bounds of what's on the agenda this evening.
Okay, great, thanks. I just didn't want to diminish such a serious topic and go into my prepared remarks that aren't really prepared, but basically I wanted to congratulate all the graduates, in particular all of the athletes as well, who the Aztec soccer team who just completed a very successful season in dire circumstances. And also I had the pleasure and honor of speaking at the Air Force paramedic graduation last week, which was one of the more joyful things that we do as governing board members, and especially as a retired naval officer. It was a huge honor and pleasure to see so many bright young faces that Pima Community College had a small part in training. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hay.
I have no comments right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I, again, also want to congratulate the graduates. It's at the end of the year, it's always the coming together that really makes participating on this board so worthwhile as we watch all of the incredible hard work be rewarded with certificates and degrees that cross the stage. And it's really been an absence to not be able to participate in that meaningful engagement. So I want to first and foremost congratulate all of the graduates, but really I want to thank the staff and the faculty and the administrators and volunteers and everyone, and particularly our IT department, who have made this year possible and have committed and focused on student success. We know it has been just such a challenging year because of COVID and the changes and the continued modifications. But seeing those graduates move from students into the workforce and heading on their educational goals is just absolutely inspiring. And every single person in this room and within the jurisdiction of this college do so much work to make that possible. So I just really want to acknowledge them, and I want to acknowledge Chancellor Lambert for your leadership and PCC TV for producing such a great virtual graduation. It really is, it was inspiring, and I just want to acknowledge that. I also just want to thank the citizen diplomats who work with Pima College. Some of the board members were invited to a meeting with the U.S. ambassador to Brazil, which was a fascinating conversation that touched on some of the work that Pima College does that I wasn't very familiar with in terms of the Citizen Ambassador Program. So it was very great to hear about that. And thank you for sharing your comments, and we'll take the materials and we'll get that study session, or we'll be discussing it certainly when the train topic comes up again. So with that, that'll conclude the governing member remarks. Next, we have our administrative report. And the first is the Strategic Enrollment Management Plan discussion with Dr. Irene Robles, Vice President of Student Affairs. But Chancellor Lambert, I'd like to hand it over to you, and then you can introduce Ms. Robles.
Yes. Hopefully this is, okay, so it's working. Great. So we're very pleased to present to you a discussion we'd like to engage in around strategic enrollment management. And so I have Dr. Irene Robles Lopez and her team of David Ariano to really lay out kind of the broad framework and then engage in some questions and discussions with the board about the way forward. So with that, Irene, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chancellor Lambert. Good evening, Chairperson Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, and guests. This evening, we will be sharing some data and information on enrollment and the comprehensive process on developing the college's strategic enrollment management plan. We wanted to be proactive in, gathering your input and your insights as to what you felt was important. My colleague, the Dean of Enrollment Management, David Arellano, will now be sharing this information with us, which will then lead us to the discussion. So David, if you would like to bring that up.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Irene Robles Lopez. Good evening, Chairperson of the Board, board members, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, and guests. As Dr. Robles Lopez mentioned, I'm going to go through and give you an update on the Strategic Enrollment Management Plan, go into a little bit of the context behind that plan, and talk a little bit about the data that supports it. And so keep in mind, we'll be highlighting information, and like Dr. Robles Lopez mentioned, there will be an opportunity for questions and discussion a little bit later in this session. So to kind of get us going and get us up to speed, what is the SEMP? And so the SEMP, the Strategic Enrollment Management Plan, is really an integrated and institutional-wide plan that helps us identify, it helps us recruit students, enroll, retain, and graduate our students as they enter and exit the institution. It also aligns with all of our college plans, and it really relates to our purpose, our vision, our mission, and the behaviors of the college. The SEMP is going to be something that is goal-oriented, it's actionable, and it's going to be measurable. And so that's the bigger picture of what the Strategic Enrollment Management Plan is. Next, I kind of want to highlight a few of the components of the SEMP. And that begins with kind of getting an institutional assessment, understanding what our climate is, looking at strategy development, the creation of goals for the institution, for units, and then the implementation piece, and then the continuous monitoring of those strategies and initiatives that the SEMP creates. In particular, I really want to share this slide or this infographic from EAB, Educational Advisory Board, because I think it really highlights the key components of the institutional assessment. I'm going to hone in specifically on competition. You've heard me talk about this in previous board sessions about our competitors. We do have two of the largest online institutions in our backyard with ASU and Southern New Hampshire. We have the U of A, which have introduced a variety of initiatives, such as the U of A Pal Pledge program that really looks at leveling the playing field in terms of cost and that value proposition. But also you'll see that there's a lot of demographic information that's going to feed into the SEMP or be looked at as we go through and analyze. The Chancellor has talked about birth dearth data, fertility rates. Those are extremely important in mapping out where we're going the next 5 years, but also the next 30, 40, 50 years, and so on. There's labor market data. There's data related to our K-12 pipeline. There's going to be data related to population shifts, things like that, all broken down by several perspectives and lenses such as age, race, ethnicity, things like that. So this just gives you a sample of that institutional assessment. Next, we're looking at SEMP participants. And so this just gives you an illustration of who's involved in the SEMP process at the institution. There's many units. There's probably many units I could have added to this particular slide, but this gives you an idea of who gives feedback, collaboration, and input into the SEMP. And then some of these units listed here are ultimately initiative owners of the SEMP. Finally, I want to highlight our SEMP roadmap. And so when we look at year one, this is what are we doing as an institution and strategizing for the immediate impact for fall 21. How do we start that recovery? How do we use this SEMP plan as a catalyst to gain that enrollment, to regain our footprint in the community and really support the community in their efforts and career goals? Years 2 through 5, that really looks to alignment with the college strategic plan, which Dr. Nick Richmond has briefed you all on. It's going to be a key piece into the Achieve 60 AZ, especially with those goals embedded within that statewide initiative and our college strategic plan. And then the SEMP plan is always for any institution key to their financial sustainability, right? Related to enrollments, related to FTSE, related to expenditure limitations. So this just kind of gives you an overall roadmap, excuse me, of that SEMP process. Next, I'm going to switch gears and kind of relay some of the context related to the SEMP. And you've seen me discuss National Student Clearinghouse data, but this is a really clear picture of the national level and the state level. In here, what we're looking at, and what I really want to highlight is, we're seeing enrollment decreases in our spring 21 data in the community college sector. In particular, we're seeing decreases of 11%. And that's essentially 10 times our pre-pandemic level declines. And then specifically looking at the state of Arizona, enrollment at community colleges in our state has decreased by 16%. So there's some larger macro factors at play at the national and state level. Honing it in a little bit more and looking at some of our longitudinal data, this is really about looking backwards so we can look forward. And in that, you can see our enrollment declines, not only as an institution, but across higher ed, began around 2010, 2011. So we are dealing with a decade worth of enrollment declines and a lot of other forces going on in higher education. So that kind of gives you some perspective there. Going a bit deeper into our data, looking at our fall enrollment for the last 5 years. What you're seeing on this particular table is that right now we're about 80 days out from the start of the fall 21 semester, but our enrollment is actually up compared to fall 20, which was our main pandemic year, but also fall of 18 and fall of 17. But it is still lower than fall of 19. And so you're seeing a lot of fluctuation in those numbers as things reopen up, as vaccinations increase. It's all in flux right now, but a lot of progress and momentum in the enrollment for the institution. This particular chart that I'm sharing complements that previous table. It's a more visual look at some of those trends or registration trends. In particular, we are, for fall 21, we are the orange line, and it's kind of mixed in with some other trend lines. And then to the right, you'll see a green line, and that's going to be our fall 2020 pandemic year. What you're seeing with that orange line is the trend in the right direction. It's trending towards pre-pandemic levels of enrollment for our fall term. That is great news for the institution. Every day, our student affairs teams and teams across the college are working hard towards enrollment, and we're seeing that in those trends. So a lot of positive for the college with this particular piece here. Finally, we talk about enrollment, we talk about access, we talk about the front door for community colleges, but retention is a huge piece. Retention and persistence is what's going to get us that repeat enrollment. It's going to get us to those completions and those graduate numbers that we do need to achieve those larger college strategic plan goals and actually make a dent or actually an impact in the larger Achieve 60 Arizona initiatives. So we'll be looking at the institutional retention data and student success data. All of that will really feed into the strategic enrollment management plan. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Irene Robles Lopez, who's going to kind of kickstart our discussion and take it from here.
Thank you so much, David, for all of that data and information. For the board members, we absolutely want to make sure that we are getting your input and your feedback. The other update that I wanted to share is that the framework for the strategic enrollment management plan, it will be evidence-based decision-making. We want to utilize the data, both qualitative and quantitative, in looking at our students, their lived experiences outside of the college, what their experience is within the college, to make sure that we are covering all those important aspects when we're looking at student experience and student success. So I did want to share that update. The first question that I just wanted to ask, does anybody have any questions about any of the data or information that was just shared prior to going into these questions?
Ms. Garcia, it looks like you have a question, and then Ms. Ripley, and then Mr. Gonzalez.
Dr. Robles, one of the things that I look at is that we look at the national data, we look at the state data, but there are other colleges that are doing much better in their recruitment. Those, and specifically those like in El Paso. And so my suggestion would be that maybe we should measure ourselves, or at least look into those other places that are doing better, and that also have the same type of demographics that we do, and, population-wise. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. That's a very good point. We will be doing benchmarking as well as we look at this. So we will absolutely look at that. Thank you.
Ms. Ripley.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for all the work that you do. This is one of our most important things that we do at this, with this board especially, is our interest in recruitment, retention, and enrollment. So thank you for that. And I do look forward to, and you mentioned benchmarks, I do look forward to follow-on meetings with you to talk about metrics, and specifically the how and the what as far as the immediate enrollment for this fall and what you intend to do. Not at this forum, but I do look forward to speaking with you about that. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you for the presentation. I think it was very good. I'm excited in reference to what's going to be happening. I do like I would like to see or share with or you can share with the board later on in reference to the K-12 data, pipeline data, because I think that's one of the areas that we need to really focus in, as I mentioned before, especially with middle school and high school, where not only the data, but one of the things I've asked many times is, not only with PCC, but also with other institutions, is the tracking of the high schoolers, the tracking of freshmen at the high school, the tracking of the seniors. But I'm very interested in reference to the pipeline data that you're going to be providing to us later on. I do like the comment that was made by Mr. Arellano in reference to looking backwards so we can look forward. I think we always have to look at what's been done in the past and look at the best practices as well too. I know that's, as you mentioned, there has been a decline in the last decade, but I think it's about time that we need to turn that around as well too. With staff like you, and faculty, and with the lead of Mr. Robles, I think we can, it's doable and can be done. But more important, as I mentioned before, one of the areas I will continue to say is that we need to not only invite the students, but also the parents, but more important, the community, in reference to what can we all do as a community. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Garcia.
Dr. Robles, one more question. Is there any plans to actually have people do recruitment as far as, being at the schools? I know that Mr. Arellano goes out there and, with the dual enrollment, and he's done a great job, considering he's really increased the numbers. I want to thank him for his efforts. He's done a great job, and he continues to strive to do more. But, in my view, and I guess for most of us, of the minorities anyway, we always think in terms that the people will not progress unless they get educated. And we need to reach out to them more, and we need to help them. One of the things that I've heard is that our completion rates at Pima, and I could be wrong, is 1 out of 10. And I guess you could clarify that for me.
Chancellor Lambert, do you want to address the completion rate question?
So, hold on. How's that?
No.
No? Okay, here we go.
Yes.
So every year we publish student right to know data, and you can go to our Pima website and pull up the student right to know, and it shows you what our success rates are for students, and which includes completion and transfer, I believe. And so we're better than, I would say, 1 in 10 when you look at both of those together, because what happens is a number of our students transfer out before they complete with us, because we have a program called AJAC, Arizona General Education, and so some students just come and get that and then they transfer. That may not show up as a completer. And so I just caution us in terms of how we look at that data and that way. And I believe we're probably right in there with some of the other Arizona colleges. Now, Arizona as a whole, we don't do as well as some of these other states. But also I will say part of that is resource investment. Some of these other states make a better commitment to community colleges by providing the resources in which to provide the programming and the support, et cetera. So all of that comes into play. But with that said, we're looking to sharpen what we're doing, under the leadership of our provost, Dr. Duran Serta. We're always trying to get better at what we can do. So you're going to see a greater attention to the data, greater attention to, especially on the retention side. We have to do better there.
Ms. Ripley?
Hi, yes, again, thank you for your presentation. One thing I wanted to mention too is that the board had a retreat a few weeks ago, and one of the things that we brainstormed, which I think would be a great idea to get together with you all in SEMP to talk about the concept of community outreach, big bang for the buck. You talk about resources, Chancellor. It would be big bang for the buck to do what we termed as either roundtables or town halls in our districts, as well as one specifically geared toward all the high school counselors. And I've talked to a few counselors who would love that, to all meet with us on your team, the board, whoever would be interested, to actually get from them, from the grassroots people, what they feel would be needed to improve both recruitment, enrollment, as well as retention. Thanks.
So, Ms. Robles, first of all, I want to acknowledge the incredible work that your team is doing to collect this data and really create a strategic initiative around this. I think for me, when you talk about the data trends, it would be really helpful, and I know this information isn't readily available, or else you would be presenting it this evening, but what actually is happening in the workforce because of the pandemic. Every day I look at the newspaper and I see articles about businesses struggling to find employees. I read articles about people making huge shifts in their career. There's going to be occurring tremendous change in incumbent workforce. People have made shifts to different types of businesses. They're now working remotely. All of these things are going to impact our enrollment, but I also think that they offer a remarkable opportunity. A lot of people, like we received an email from leaders in the hospitality and culinary field saying how difficult it is for them to get employees. They are struggling to get their restaurants open full hours, and they have one restaurant closed in our community because they don't have employees from that field. So really understanding what is the economic and business climate, and then how can we pivot quickly to meet occurring demands. I think that's going to be a real opportunity bubble for us. And so getting that data would be really helpful. To Ms. Garcia's point, I think this idea of enrollment centers, I would love to see us really explore models for mobile enrollment centers where we can actually go to schools with the center and get people enrolled, and every single barrier. We know everything is a barrier. So what can we do to just continue to eliminate those barriers? And maybe it's not mobile centers. That might not work in our community. It might actually be building a center. I don't know, but I think really figuring out what are those continued barriers. And finally, I would just ask that, in 2019, we spent a lot of money on those one-time, on-off, we've sort of referred to as the faucet of initiatives, where we were pumping money into one-time actionable results. And we know that not only did we lose all those students because of the pandemic, we still have an opportunity to go and find them, the people who never enrolled, who never engaged with the college, and get them enrolled. They really, otherwise, that cohort is a lost generation academically, that they're missing the opportunity. So how can we see that as another potential to really grow because of that delta of students who didn't enroll? So those are things I would love to see moving forward. So I'm just putting it out there. Okay, Dr. Hay, any comments from you? Dr. Hay? Okay, I don't hear any. Okay, I still see her on the call, so she's with us. Okay.
Sorry, no comment. I had to find my button. No comment.
Okay. Ms. Robles, I guess you have a second question on the board. Is there any other comments from the members of the board to that as well? Okay, I don't hear any. So thank you very much. We really appreciate all the work, and we look forward to hearing, how we're going to actualize and put these into more aggressive strategies.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, next we have our reports by representatives to the board. The first is our staff report by Michael Lopez. Mr. Lopez, you have 5 minutes. Mr. Lopez? Okay. We'll come back. We will move on to our administrative report by Jeff Thies. Jeff, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairperson Klinko, board members, Chancellor Lambert, students, colleagues, and guests. Hope you're having a great Wednesday evening. So in the administrative representative report, we're going to talk a little bit about our humanities, social sciences, and education division, shed a little bit of light on a few other projects administrators are currently actively either completing or in the process of completing, and then share a little bit of data at the end. So humanities, social sciences, and education. Anthropology faculty, Dr. Diana Rep, was honored this spring as the year's recipient of the Educational Leadership in Diversity and Inclusion Award. Dr. Rep's nomination emphasized her work with the Native American Student Association and the Arizona Undergraduate Research Symposium. Congratulations, Dr. Rep. At last week's Arizona Women in Higher Education Conference, Dr. Celeste Atkins was recognized by the organization with the Emerging Leaders Award. She is a PCC adjunct faculty in sociology and also serves as a faculty fellow for a Title III and TLC joint project that provides professional development opportunities for faculty in applied technology. Political science student Nick Tran has been re-accepted in the 38th cohort of the Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange for Youth Professionals. The program provides young professionals ages 18 to 24 the opportunity to attend 2 months of German language training, 4 months attending school, and 5 months gaining practical work experience in Germany. Congratulations, Nick. And highlighting the post-degree teacher certification program. As we are all aware, there's a continuing shortage of teachers in the state of Arizona. So it's critical that we have a program such as our post-degree teacher certification program. The Arizona Department of Education approved K-12 teacher certification program is top ranked in the elementary area, is second ranked in the secondary program, and is most effective in the special education program according to the Arizona Department of Education. The program consistently enrolls approximately 500 plus students. 350 plus are employed as full-time K-12 teachers. 10% of the enrollment is outside of our local area. This program is delivered 100% online, although there are face-to-face school site observations during field experience and internships. And our current graduation rate for this program is 58%. It is one of the top producers of K-12 teachers in Arizona, on average about 100 new teachers each year. The program plays a critical role in helping address the massive statewide teacher shortage, with 93% of our graduates being employed. There's a significant number of certified teachers take program coursework as professional development as well. Great job, post-degree teacher cert program. Moving on to a few other projects. The college is working with child parent centers, the Pima County government, United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona, to bring the first of hopefully several new child care centers back to the campuses. The first center will be at Desert Vista campus with the goal to open in spring 2022, if not sooner. Also in 2022, the fall of, we will be offering our first HyFlex enabled classrooms. These classrooms blend virtual, online, and in-person learning through the use of new video, audio, and computer technology. By the completion of the first phase of the project, there will be 2 rooms at each of the main campuses, plus a classroom at each of the adult education and technology centers. Future phases will be based on the demand by students and faculty for the use of this technology. It's a great leap forward in the ability to create interactive learning environments. And lastly, kudos to the Registrar's Office, Financial Aid Office, David Donderwitz, representatives from Veterans and International Offices, and others It took a monumental effort to complete the administrative processes required after temporarily adjusting the college's incomplete and withdrawal policies for spring 2020, given the pandemic's effects on that semester. The great effort of this team minimized the negative impact on student success and supported the completion agenda. And lastly, I've shared several spring 21 equitable outcome graphs. They show a longitudinal list of success rates, earning an A or B, earning an A or C. And then there's also a line graph that is superimposed on top of the bar graph. Its axis is on the far right, and that's a representation of the enrollment of the different subgroups of the student population. With that, you'll see an equity gap. The equity gaps are all based on a comparison with the white student population and the enrollment drop. And one thing to add at the end, a guiding principles document that came out from the Community College Research Center provides some excellent information and a quick read on a summative list of different programs throughout the country that have helped to improve the credential attainment of the ethnicities that are highlighted in the above tables. And that concludes my administrative report for June.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thies. We'll go back to Mr. Lopez. Is Michael Lopez on the call?
Yes.
Okay. The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
There was not a written report submitted. However, staff council officers met, and the voting for the new staff council for 21-22 will be finished and concluded here shortly. We just need a couple of more representatives to be identified in 1 or 2 areas. And also staff officers wanted to thank the board and those responsible for any recognition, financial recognition to staff members that may be made possible. And the 2% increase as well. However, as was stated earlier through the representatives for the faculty, that it's been a while, I think 2014 or so. So the 2% is very much appreciated, but still falls short of what I think is deserved. But thank you very much, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lopez. We appreciate it. Next, we have our Chancellor's report. Chancellor Lambert.
Good evening, everybody. So first of all, I want to say congratulations to the students who just completed this past academic year, and congratulations to the faculty, the staff, and the administrators and the board for all of your support for their success. We could not do it if we weren't working together to ensure that we continue to graduate individuals. Also, we have put in plans for reentry. We're starting to bring employees back to all of our locations. We're doing it in a gradual way with the hope that by the time we get to August, when we open the doors again to the students and community, that more and more of us will be physically on site, but it's not going to be the way it used to be. So we recognize that through the pandemic, that there's a group of employees who could work completely virtual. And then we also recognize there's a group of employees that, because of the nature of the work, they need to be on the ground, 40 hours a week, et cetera. But most employees can be somewhere in the middle. And what I mean by that, allowing more flexibility to work from home 1 or 2 days a week. So that's kind of the model that you're going to see us going into the new academic year to deploy, and then we'll gauge that and see what makes the most sense long term. But I recognize that that we can do more of our work in a way that doesn't always have to mean coming into the office, provided that we continue to deliver the service and support to our students and that we're meeting their needs and to their satisfaction. So I just want you to be aware of that. Also, a group that just doesn't get recognized very often, and what folks don't realize, the executive leadership team puts in countless hours. They're not 40-hour work week employees. They're putting in 50 hours, 60 hours, sometimes 70 hours a week, and so they don't always get the recognition. So I just want to say thank you to all of the executive leadership team, because it starts with that strategic part of the equation. Without the planning and the thinking ahead, a lot of all the successes we've enjoyed till now would not actually come to pass without that strategic level piece. Obviously, it's not enough to do that piece, but without that piece, we're just wandering around in the forest. So thank you, ELT. Also, just the other day, Dr. David Doré, Dr. Ricardo Castro-Salazar, and Dr. Daisy Patel-Rodriguez and I participated in the visitors program with El Salvador educators. And this is sponsored through the United States State Department. And we had a very engaging conversation with educators from El Salvador, and we will look to see what type of partnerships might grow out of that experience, just like what you indicated, Damien, in terms of the Brazil piece. These are all interconnected, and we want to thank Pat Watson for her leadership in making sure that our Citizens Visitors Program stays very robust here in this community. I want to congratulate the new student senators. We look forward to working with you as we go through the year. I want to say congratulations to Nina Corson. She will be the new Campus VP for East Campus, so congratulations, Nina. And also thank you, Board Member Ripley and Chair Klinko, for participating in Senator Kelly's visit. And just to let you all know that, one of the pieces we talked to the senator about was the Jobs Act, and making sure that all short-term programs, credit and non-credit, would be eligible for Pell, especially the credit side, because the way the current law was constructed was it was just going to be clock hour programs of 8 weeks or more. Well, unfortunately, it did not make it through the Senate. So we're going to continue to push on this issue, and hopefully we can move through the Higher Education, Labor, and Pension Committee on the Senate side as part of that work. I just want to clarify some things, because I think there's a misunderstanding about the college's commitment to transfer education. We are highly committed to transfer education since I've been here, and I'll give you some examples. Pima Online is about transfer education. The Teaching and Learning Center is about transfer education. Dual enrollment is about transfer education. Guided Pathways is about transfer education. By the way, Career Technical already is a guided pathway. We didn't have guided pathways on the transfer side. Open educational resources, as the chair and Dr. Hay know, the students came to the college and said, we wanted to start a committee to look at expanding open educational resources. A lot of that is centered in the transfer side of the equation to make cost affordable and make access to textbooks critical. We also created a Center of Excellence for the Arts. So the intent was not to leave out the arts and the humanities from the Center of Excellence conversation. I've also said to folks publicly, we're open to creating other centers of excellence. So I just had a conversation with Dean Michael Parker, the provost, and others about creating a Center of Excellence in the social sciences as an example of our commitment to transfer education. We've been building university partnerships. And then people may not realize this, but college, just when I arrived early on, we had invested in building that brand new science building at the Northwest campus. By the way, that is state-of-the-art, and in some cases, and no offense to Dr. Hay and the University of Arizona, but some of those labs are better than what they have at the university. And now we're making another investment into the science. I just want to point out that we're not ignoring transfer. All of these things are part of that commitment. We just can't look at them as apples to apples, because the one thing that hasn't happened at the college prior to my arrival was we were way under investing in the workforce side. And you've seen some of those programs. I mean, they were jammed into small spaces. Things are just crowded on top of each other. So that's why the big investment. But that was all done as part of a master planning job. And the master planning work back in, when we launched it in 2015, also focused on the transfer side. It did not ignore the transfer piece. It just seems that that gets overshadowed because a lot of the conversation, not just internally, but externally in the community, nationally, statewide, has been on workforce. As you pointed out, Mr. Chair, that's the conversation. And everybody's worried about our ability to maintain our economy by having the skilled workers that are necessary. So a lot of the conversation, and people look to the community college expressly for that area. So with that, that's my report, and I hope everyone has a great summer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chancellor. So at our board retreat, we talked about streamlining items, so we're not going to read the information items any longer, and the consent agenda is publicly posted. So if I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Now we're on to our action items. The first is nomination and election of a new governing board vice chair. The currently serving vice chair and secretary, Meredith Hay, has indicated that due to other commitments, she is concerned that she is not able to devote sufficient time and duties of her board office, and as a result, it would be in the best interest of the college board to elect a replacement. So with that, I would nominate Catherine Ripley as the vice chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Well, we have a nomination on the table, so we would need to vote up or down that motion, and then if it was voted no, we could elect someone else. Correct, Mr. Sullivan, or do we?
Well, he could nominate. That way, you know what the choice is, and the other question would be whether Ms. Ripley accepts the nomination.
Correct.
Oh, I accept.
So if we had another nomination, then how do we proceed with the vote?
If you have another nomination, then you're going to vote on
each of the nominations. Okay. So, Mr. Gonzalez, is there another nomination from the floor?
My question is going to be, I know that the last time we nominated, we nominated several people. That's how it was done when you got back on the, when we voted for you.
Right, so currently, Meredith Hay, Dr. Hay, she's stepping down from the role because of other time commitments. So it's just the one opening that is available. So it's just the vice chair role that we're voting on this evening. This is not our normal election, it's just because of the vacancy that's being caused because of her other commitments. So we're only voting on the one seat. And it's only for the remainder of the term. So it's not for a 2-year period, it's just until the general election, which would be in January. So it's to fill Meredith Hay's seat for the remainder of the term, until January. Okay? Okay. So all in favor of the motion? Is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye? Aye. Anyone opposed? Ms. Garcia, I didn't hear nay or yay. Okay, you abstained. So the motion passes 4-0 with Ms. Garcia abstaining. The next item is the downtown campus hotel motel development. Mr. Sullivan, could you read the recommendation?
The Chancellor recommends the governing board authorize the Chancellor or his designee to proceed with the planning, design, and construction of the adaptive repurposing and development of the downtown campus hotel motel properties.
Okay, Mr. Sullivan, I'd like to begin with making a motion to approve the recommendation with the caveat that the back half of the Tucson Inn be evaluated separately and considered in a separate meeting, whether or not we're going to make that investment through a study assessment. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so now we have discussion. Ms. Ripley, you look like you have something to say, as does Ms. Garcia.
I do, yes. So thank you very much, everybody who was involved in providing us a very thorough study of what we might be able to do with the hotel properties. There were several options that were submitted. There were 5 options, I believe, that were specific. And I think there could be hundreds, but they provided 5 that were solid options. But I would like to propose that instead of approving one of those or none of them en masse, another option. And that would be to not en masse approve any of those, but look at a part of it, a portion of one of those options. And I would like to propose the front end of the Tucson Inn, to include the historic sign, which I understand we're getting community input and funds for that. And also only one other piece, and the rest of it we can do feasibility studies and decide at another time. I don't think we need to decide all of it now. The second piece I think that we could move to go forward with is the copper cactus Inn, and as long as we agree to make it dedicated towards social services, such as enrollment, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the immigrant center that we had talked about. So a lot of these places are housed elsewhere and really need more room, need more attention, and also just a bigger space, a nicer space, and a dedicated space, dedicated towards social services. So I would propose that, in addition to looking at the possibility of part of that, of the back end being parking space, which we do actually need. I know this personally because I taught at downtown. So I would just like to that's my discussion, is to offer another option.
Okay.
Chairman Klinko?
Yes, Dr. Hay.
Ms. Ripley, would that include the food pantry?
Yes, that would definitely include a food pantry. Yes, I think that's part of social services as well. And I think there was a lot of items that were talked about that could have been included in a larger iteration of what was offered. But I think anything that includes social services, to include a food pantry, I think would really be, again, I like the term big bang for the buck.
Chairman Klinko, if I can follow on.
So just for clarification, so there are 3 properties altogether. So there's the Copper Cactus, the Frontier, and the Tucson Inn. And so again, what we heard as part of the study session was the need for a variety of functions and uses that we have in this college. There's in addition to all of the social services, there's also, here's the list, there's also the, if they can move to this slide, there's also the Teaching and Learning Center. So, I would really go with this recommendation, this idea of which is proposed in this, in the Chancellor's recommendation, of dealing with all 3 of those properties. So the two smaller properties, and then the front of the Tucson Inn. And then the back of the Tucson Inn, which is the most expensive item, to really conduct a feasibility study to determine whether or not there is a use. We've heard there's a potential use for the United Way to create housing for at-risk students, and that may or may not be possible. So actually evaluating that.
I think we can get...
Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry.
Dr. Hay.
Chairman Klinko, so I would really like to advocate for the Teaching and Learning Center. I think we have a once in a lifetime, with post-COVID, a chance to rethink about how we deliver content, and having a state-of-the-art facility on making sure our faculty and our teachers are using the state-of-the-art pedagogy and the learning center for making sure the students have access to everything they need to be successful. As Dr. Doré mentioned at the study session, it's all about retention. Teaching and Learning Center is absolutely essential to our vision and our mission and our pledge as a board to ensure retention and success of our students. So I really want to make sure that TLC, Teaching and Learning Center, is included in this if possible.
So yes, I'd add to that as well. Thank you, Dr. Hayes. I may have misspoke when I mentioned enrollment. Enrollment would go along with teaching and learning. So I think a dedicated enrollment center, whether it's called a teaching and learning center, either way, I think does deserve a dedicated space. And I would just like to add, for the benefit of the audience, I had an extensive session with our finance person to really understand where this funding is coming from, because there's a lot of attention being brought to everything as far as how we spend our money. We're a nonprofit. So one of the things that I understood was that this money would come from reserves. And if we did a portion of it, instead of spending tens of millions of dollars, we could spend between $10 and $13 million just on this piece, so that we could at least have dedicated space to social services and to the teaching and learning / enrollment center, which to me is one of the most important things we should focus on at this point. We've already dedicated a lot of funding to centers of excellence, to the automotive center and aviation center, which I think is great in the long term. It's going to bring in more students. But immediately, I think if we are going to look at using space, I think that this would be the best use of the money now, not the entire hotel project. I think we could take it piece by piece, look at it later, and whether that might mean leveling the rest of it, making parking lots, which again, we do need parking lots. I think at that point, we can decide at a later point. But for now, this is what I would propose.
Chancellor Lambert?
Yes, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to put up here this graphic because I think it really depicts what you were saying, Mr. Chair, what you were saying, Ms. Ripley, and what Dr. Hay was talking about. So essentially, I just want to clarify, right? So we would move on this plan right here, which is essentially option 3 with a modification. And the modification would be where you see new PCC project. That's where we would come in and do that feasibility study, determine should we do parking, should we even do a hotel, rooms there. So that's what we would study. So then that piece will just not be addressed at this point. So when you look at those 3 properties as noted, the cost would be for construction is $8.3 million. And then total cost of the project was projected at $14,583,000 and some dollars. And our plan is to fund that out of the reserves. So the first stage of this would be to hire an architect who will come in and do the design work and the planning work, and that will happen within the first year, and then the second year would be the actual construction or the renovation, adaptive reusing of that property. So we could wrap it all up within 2 years. And then while we're doing that, we'll do the feasibility study on that other project. Now, what's interesting about that piece, if you go back to option 5, they talked specifically about where you see the new PCC project piece there on the visual, and that's where we could do the welcome center and a parking structure. And so those would be things we would also assess. Now, keep in mind, when we add that, say that piece of the option 5, that's going to add an additional expense to this project that we may need to either go out for a bond or look at some other way to fund that extension, other than if you just leveled it and made it a parking lot.
Right, but again, that would be decided later.
Yes, that would be later
because,
decided.
Yeah, because I think I was speaking to somebody earlier, not in this room, about a welcome center and whether or not it's appropriate to move that from downtown to this space. I think that would be another discussion. But
exactly.
But anyway, my point is I think that we don't need to approve this entire project. Indeed, I spoke with Dr. B about the funding coming out of reserves, which would not, in fact, take away from, it was very important to me that it didn't take away from faculty and staff and any other type of stipends that we might be offering later. And also that it would be a win-win for the community, for us, for everybody involved. And also one of the stipulations I would have, and I spoke with Dr. B about this, and I want to reemphasize it, is that the commitment and obligation to start and break ground and work on the healthcare, Allied Health Center of Excellence needs to take priority.
Yes.
Because that's already been approved. So I would like to propose that to the board, that takes priority actually before we do this.
Well, in fact, you just approved the architect tonight, so that will start the allied health piece. And so this will lag behind that because we need to go through a process to identify an architectural firm who will work on it. So it will lag. However, this is a smaller project, so when you start getting into it, it could get done quicker than the Allied Health just because of the size piece.
So just for clarification, so Ms. Ripley, so this option 3 with the modification that the back be removed and assessed separately on the culinary arts program, that is acceptable to you? And it would be capped at $14 million. We would have no overage or whatever. What is the number, Chancellor Lambert?
So the all-in cost based on what was presented on Monday night was $14,583,865.
For my idea, for this?
This would be for all 3.
All 3 minus the back.
Minus, okay.
Yeah.
So
Based
that
on
would
what you were
essentially
saying.
be what
Yes.
I was just saying.
Yes.
So-
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Garcia?
But that's not including all the cost, the additional cost. I mean, that's just basic, because I believe that in the presentation, they said there were certain areas that were not, the cost was not presented. Is that not right? Like some of the architects, some of the, the renovations, not the equipment, the furnishings, all those things were not included.
Will you pull up the option 3?
So I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe what they were talking about was buildings that have been just not, they haven't really assessed them or built, I mean, they're concepts of what buildings could be. So if you look at
Here we go, right here. So those are the other costs that are included in that 14 million, the escalation costs, the architect fees, the other development, and then you have the
permits?
Yes, all of that is included.
And then if you move to the next slide, this was what we really don't have actual genuine budget numbers. And the next slide, where they're proposing these very large buildings that could be built at a future date. So you can see there's like and this, they even told us is actually low. This they couldn't do for this price because didn't
In fact, we
correctly.
got an update on this option 5. The actual cost would be around 26 million for construction.
So that's not what's being.
No, that's why we're not moving forward. But if you added in, say, a welcome center-like and a parking structure, which would be akin to the option 5, on top of the 14 million for all in, based on what you were talking about, Board Member Ripley, that would add an additional, let's see here, $17,700,000 for just those 2 pieces, the parking structure and the welcome center construction cost. But if you add all in, that's an additional, that will be $29,329,000. So you can see how the cost goes up significantly just to add those 2 pieces in.
Ms. Garcia.
Chairman Klinko?
Oh, yes. Wait, Dr. Hay, Ms. Garcia has been waiting patiently, and then we will come to you. And then I'm sure Mr. Gonzalez, do you have something to add?
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so, in my view, I've already stated that I don't, I think historical preservation is important. But I don't believe, and I will not accept, that the college should be paying for that, and that we should be part of that. There should be other funding sources that should come from the city government, or the county, or maybe a foundation, but the college money should not be spent on those items. So the renovation of the hotels for me is not an option, okay? And the other part of it, the other reasons that I oppose it, I mean, I'm okay with the Tucson Inn, if it's gonna be a culinary. I think that's the architect is, and historically is nice. But the building itself, what you guys are proposing, the space, looking at the space, even for a pantry, even for counseling, even for a teaching center, I'm sorry, it is not adequate. It is not adequate. I've had meetings. I know how those things work. You're not talking about one-to-one. We're talking about maybe, I don't know, the provost could probably say how many people would be in a meeting. But, it's not good space utilization. So, in my view, I could not approve such a project.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez? Oh, yes, excuse me, thank you. Dr. Hay?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Klinko. I fully support Board Member Ripley's suggestion about really focusing on the social services and the teaching learning center phasing this in a way we don't commit to the whole thing, the whole pie at once. I think her plan and her approach is very sober and really focuses on the student needs and the immediate outcomes without too much cost. So I am fully supportive of her proposal.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Gonzalez, and then Ms. Ripley.
$18 million, $40 million is a lot of money as well, too. But we need to decide is we're looking at maybe possibly option 3. One of the things that I also will support Ms. Garcia in reference to the renovation preservation of the hotels. I don't think it's worth it. I did mention the last time, I think it's, if we're gonna build something, would have to be new construction. I'm a firm believer of that, because it should be. As I mentioned the last time, I think it's great that we are trying to preserve, as you mentioned a while ago, is the signs. I think it's historical. And as I mentioned the last time, is for example, Maricopa, the town of Maricopa is also have an area in reference to what they're renovating in reference to the signs as well too. Earlier, there was one of our audience mentioned honor the past. And one of the things that I want to mention is the word honor. I know that the back in the initial buying of the properties, it was basically bought in reference to the land, correct?
Mr. Sylvan, could you provide some insight into how we purchased these properties? And
well, the primary goal was that there was a long-time conception that the downtown campus would encompass that entire block, essentially. And so when these properties became available, there was a discussion about whether to continue with that vision or not. And so the decision was, yes, this was an opportunity to consolidate and increase the footprint of downtown campus. And so the board took the opportunity to do that. I mean, this is a different board than the one that purchased it, and it's up to this board to decide what to do with those properties. That's the decision before you. But the real intent at the time was we had an opportunity to consolidate, or rather expand the footprint of the downtown campus.
And the reason I'm bringing it forward is, as you are all aware, we all got an email in reference to the realtor, in reference to the, and then coming back to the word that it was mentioned back then, it was only when Pima Community College did buy it, it was in reference to the dirt, the property, but more importantly, the word of being a parking lot as well too, back then.
So I will say, Mr. Gonzalez, just as a point of clarification, when the board made the decision, I myself said, I'd like to see adaptive reuse options for these properties and how that we could integrate a programmatic approach that aligns with all of the community priorities. So, I read that letter too. The board never met with that person. I don't know who that is. That was somebody who was involved in the agreement. I'm not sure who they represented or what their relationship was in the agreement. So I can't speak to that. I saw the letter, I forwarded on to the chancellor. But what I heard tonight from community members and people who've been involved in planning of this area for many, many years is just how important integrating all of these different things together are. And, and so maybe Jeff, if you want to, Mr. Sylvan, if you want to just, I don't know if there's anything to say about that letter or.
Well, so I mean, the letter is from Mike Gross, who was the broker involved at the time. I actually had a conversation with them about that letter, and most of it is his personal opinion. It's not related to the purchase. He does have a recollection about his belief about what was intended at the time, but I guess what I'm saying is it's not really relevant because A, the board didn't make any particular commitment to the use of that property. Even if they did, they didn't pass a resolution. The board did not take any collective action as to what would be done with that property. That's the decision of this board. So even to the extent there was a conversation about some concepts at the time, it's not binding in any way on this board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sylvan. Well, in the letter, he does mention that he saw our meeting, our study session meeting as well. That's what opted him to generate that information and share it with the rest of the board. And lastly, I just want to end that, and coming back to the hotels, Cactus and what's the middle one? The Frontier. I don't see it for us or Pima College, in my opinion, to renovate those. I do believe that's a new construction, whatever we're going to be doing, I think it's more feasible, cost efficient, cost effective. And with that, in reference to preservation and renovation, I would like to ask you, Mr. Klinko, to recuse yourself in reference to taking a vote on this, in participating to avoid any conflict of interest, because you are one of the individuals that is very active in reference to preservation and renovation stuff as well too. And correct me if I'm wrong, you have some hands also with what's there as well too.
So, Mr. Gonzalez, your
Point of order, Mr. Klinko.
Yes, Dr. Hay.
I'm sorry, but that's just ridiculous. I don't see any conflict of interest. It's like saying I'm interested in education and higher education, and therefore I shouldn't vote on anything on education. I don't see any conflict of interest with Chairman Klinko's. He has an interest in preservation, sure, but he has he has zero conflict of interest in this. And I have zero conflict of interest in advancing education. That's a ridiculous statement, and I don't agree with that.
It might be a ridiculous statement, but that's like, as you mentioned, you said that you have no activity and nothing in reference to this. And I'll take your word. And that's one of the things that we all have to ask. The word means a lot.
So, Mr. Gonzalez, I can tell you, and we can have Mr. Sylvan discuss this. So your predecessor brought this issue up, and we hired outside counsel and had it looked into, because I was concerned that there would even be the impression of a conflict of interest, because I have no financial primary, secondary, or frankly even tertiary relationship with any of the properties and the decisions of the college. Expertise is not a conflict, and it would be like if every time you advocated for the Pasquayaki community and resources being advocated or assigned to that community, that I would say, you have a conflict because of your relationship with that governing body. And we had it addressed. It's not a conflict, and I don't see recusing myself of my fiduciary responsibility to this institution as the right thing to do.
Okay, it's not a governing body. It's my constituency. Everybody that lives on the reservation that's 18 and over, and within my district, those are my constituency. In reference to with the Pasquayaki tribe, the administration and government, that's different. I've always, in fact, I invited Mr. Lambert, and also, as I mentioned before, I want to be included when both boards meet as well too. But in reference to working with the community or advocating for students and the parents and the students, those are our constituents. The middle school kids, they're my constituents. As we all know, anybody that lives in that property, they have interest in reference to school. Right now, what mentioned earlier, the K-12 program, those are potential PCC students as well too, but they're all my constituents. So don't mix up the government with my district as well too.
So again, I'm not trying to diminish in any way. I am simply saying we all have different types of expertise.
Exactly, and that's how I received it.
Okay, I apologize.
And I know what the gray areas is as well too, as I mentioned before. Like I mentioned, working with administration, that's different. I would not represent myself or advocate for, I let them do what they need to be doing, but they need to work with, not myself, but with the staff and faculty and the administration here. But when you mention the kids and broadly in reference to Pascuayaki, I take it as all tribal members. And administration is
Chairman?
different.
Yes.
Chairman Klenko,
Dr. Hay.
are you in any way involved in any of the decisions involving the historic preservation of the property?
No, I certainly don't. I mean, I have no financial, only on this body. This is it.
Right.
I have no financial
But
gain.
there are no decisions about what's historical, what's not. You're not involved in any of that, right?
No.
Okay, so it's a moot point.
So again, there was a report that was done. You can get a copy from Jeff, the assessment that was done. I don't have any legal conflict.
Okay, good to know.
So you don't have anything to do with any of the properties adjacent to that either, is that correct?
I don't own or have any relationship with any property within, I think, probably a 1.5 mile radius. I want to be careful because I do live a little bit south of downtown. So within a mile, probably in a 1.5 mile radius of the campus, I don't have any financial interest in any properties in a primary, secondary, or even tertiary way. So I don't have any personal investment. But I do care about the alignment of our community's priorities in the same way that we all care about different things. And that expertise is something that I have certainly shared and I hope to bring to this, because I actually think adaptive reuse is a really incredible model because we don't tear buildings down, we don't take them to the dump, we're able to find a viable, dynamic use which aligns with our institutional priorities. And to me, that's a synergy of positive impact because we are doing multiple things at once and we're addressing some of the most critical needs of the college, the Center of Teaching and Learning, the Immigrant and Refugee Center, the food pantries. All of these programs are programs that we have articulated over and over again are key priorities for the institution. So finding a good marriage to me is something that we should be excited about and promoting. And I understand that that's not how everyone feels.
Well, and for me, those things are very important to me too, and I believe to all of us. But in my view, those buildings do not provide the type of space that would be required and to renovate them. Maybe they need to be relocated. The bungalows on Broadway are beautiful. They look very nice. I'm not diminishing, the aesthetics and what it is. It's just that, is the college the place to do it?
So I would have one more. I think we should probably conclude the conversation. Okay, Ms. Ripley has something to say, yes.
Sorry, I just want to bring it back let's bring it back in, because again, my initial proposal was the Tucson Inn and part of the Cactus Inn for the reasons that we stated, for social services, for diversity, equity, and inclusion, for the pantry, for immigration center, all of those things. And I think when we had this meeting, the study session, the word that Dr. DeRay presented, which rung a bell with me, is consolidation, because all of those things are scattered throughout 5 campuses. And I think having it consolidated somewhere is really important. Now, adaptive reuse is the key word. So it's not turning these back into hotels. It's reusing them adaptively and adapting them to our needs. So the inside of it would probably, I'm guessing, would be gutted. And it would be, we could make it work as far as the inside of the structure. So maintaining the integrity of the hotels isn't as important as adapting it for our use. I mean, to me, in my eyes, the only thing that's going to be, the only remnant of those hotels will be the sign, the Tucson Inn sign, and everything else will adapt to our own use. So that's why I presented a hybrid and minimal dedication of resources if we're going to spend that money anyway on consolidating, this is a win-win, I feel, for the community, and I think it would be not just the cool factor, but it's also keeping in mind that we wanted that entire square footage of property to make the downtown campus the hub for Pima Community College, which I think that was the long-term strategic plan that I understood it as making, you know, downtown, this is where it's at, this is where there is public transportation, it's more accessible, and accessibility and affordability are the two things that we, as a community college, need to really put our money where our mouth is. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Thanks.
I'll be short. Okay.
Yes.
So I think, you know, adaptive, if, you know, maybe I misunderstood the word adaptive. If adaptive is changing it somehow, keeping some of the integrity of what it looks like, but changing it so that it is adaptable and makes room for what is needed, I'm okay with that. But I need to see the plan.
Yeah, so again, you know, that was, I think, all of the architectural study that has been done. So if, again, you know, I would not be promoting and advancing something if it didn't have a functional use for the college. You know, I take my fiduciary responsibility very serious. We did all of these studies, all of the architectural studies that were done to look at how and whether they were viable for those types of uses. And what we found out was that they were cheaper than new construction. There was potentially federal tax credits or other money that Dr. B talked about, and that they could serve these functions in a way that made sense. So I mean, that's what was presented. And so, you know, again, it's not keeping a motel that's going to be serving as a motel. It's how does it actually function. So what I heard was, you know, spaces were going to be enclosed, carports were going to be enclosed. There was going to be, you know, indoor-outdoor spaces and, you know, gardens and suddenly outdoor teaching opportunities. There's a whole slew of things while creating this edge of our campus that actually faces outward. I mean, one of the things about the downtown campus is it's always been facing inward. It's always sort of turned its back on the community, even though it is in the center of the community. And I think this is a really wonderful way to sort of turn that and create something that is also in scale really relevant for a number of the constituencies and programs that are talking about moving in. So,
I like Pat's plan, but I'd like to see more information, if you guys are okay with.
So when we hire the architect and they do the design work, then that's when we'll be able to see much more detail and so forth. So we would be keeping you obviously apprised of all that progress, and then we have to hire a contractor, and then the board would have to approve that as part of the process. So all of that will come through this board.
I think, yeah, one more thing, sorry, I know we're running out of time, but I think just also to look at the bigger picture is, personally, I mean, I've traveled all over the world, and part of what I see when I go into a new town is the charm. So if I'm going into a new town where there's just a bunch of Motel 6s and Ramada Inns, and sorry, I don't want to name drop too many, but it could be any town in the world, then I'm not interested. But when I see the charm of Broadway, Congress, the Rialto, the Fox, all of the charm of downtown, that they've done a great job. I was here 25 years ago, and it looks different. So I think this is also an opportunity for us to play a bigger role in Tucson, and to really, present ourselves. So again, I think it's a win-win. I think adaptive reuse to social services, and particularly to enrollment, teaching and learning, and yeah, we'll keep the sign because it's cool, and it's also honoring our history. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
Okay, so before we vote, just to clarify what we're voting on. So it's option 3, not to exceed 14.5.
So, Mr. Chair, can
Yes.
I say it this way? Option 3, with the modification to conduct a feasibility study related to the south end building of the Tucson Inn for either parking and/or hotel housing use, and consideration will be also looked at in terms of a parking structure. And I use Welcome Center, but that can be loosely set. So that would be the motion.
Okay.
And then it would stay within the cost range of $8.3 million to $14.583,865.
Okay. Okay. So yes, that I believe is the intent of the motion.
Yes.
So, and that's okay with the seconder, just for clarification, Dr. Hay?
Yes.
Okay. So that is the motion on the table. So we're going to have a vote. So all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes 3-2 with Ms. Garcia and Mr. Gonzalez abstaining. Okay. Request for future agenda items. We heard about potentially a study session to talk about the issues that you've raised, and we're going to be talking about those, I would assume, anyway, as that project comes forward. Are there any other future agenda items?
It's not an agenda item, but maybe Mr. Lambert can ask. I've been getting calls from the community in reference to utilizing the parks or the fields, I guess. When can we do that, or are they open already?
No, well, I will follow up on that, because we have, been trying to not open up the college too much yet, but as we're moving through this transition to being able to open up, let me find out when we'll be opening that up to the community.
Okay.
Okay? Jeff, will you make
Yes.
sure?
The agenda item that I want to share, Ms. Ripley mentioned it briefly, but I think we need to really go back to the community, either having roundtables, to be in touch. Now that we're exiting this gray cloud, I think it's an opportunity to see the light and show the light to the people in reference to how better yet to meet with the people, but also provide them the information and the knowledge as what Pima has to offer to them as well too.
So what if we say it like this, Chancellor Lambert, if you could come back at our next regularly scheduled meeting, so not the special meeting that we might have, but the regular meeting,
Okay.
and present a public engagement plan for the board that we can actualize and go out as board members and really try to be the leaders engaged with the college leadership to actually reach out to those constituencies. Does that sound like that would work? So that type of plan. So rather than just having another study session where we hear a lot of information, actually a plan. Does that Chancellor Lambert, is that something?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We will do that.
Okay, so that won't be on the agenda. It will be on the agenda, but it'll be a plan that we're going to actualize and we're all going to commit to. So, yes, Ms. Garcia.
When are we going to get the information on the lawyer for the bylaws?
So Andrea and I will work on seeing what some options for dates are for a different topic. We had talked about possibly a couple dates in the last week of June, so we'll see if one of those might work.
Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. Hearing no other agenda items, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.